Over the last few months, we've seen increasingly alarming stories about the rise of the far right in Greece, Hungary, France, and other European countries. With me to discuss this is Jamie Bartlett from Demos, a think tank in London. Jamie, we've talked a lot about Greece recently because Greece is in some ways in the eye of the Eurozone crisis. And we've heard quite a bit about Golden Dawn, which is a far-right group in Greece. And they've been handing out food parcels, but for Greeks only. They've organized a blood bank, but again restricted to Greeks. So to what extent do you think the rise of the far right is related to the Eurozone crisis?
Well, the example in Greece of Golden Dawn's electoral success is actually rather unusual. Certainly that has been in part caused by the Eurozone crisis, but actually across Europe the rise of these far-right, often xenophobic, populist parties has not really coincided with the crisis at all. They've been growing fairly consistently over the last 10 or 15 years, and especially over the last 5 years, but not particularly over the last 2 years at all. Actually, since the Eurozone crisis, I don't think they've done particularly well. They haven't really capitalised on it in the way that they thought they might. They're trying, but I think the economy is a weak point for them, actually. What's been driving the rise of these populist right-wing parties has rather been a combination of real concerns about the way immigration is changing national identity, concerns about mainstream politicians' inability to respond to those worries, and a general sense of huge distrust in the institutions of governance, in mistrust in the mainstream media, in the judiciary, in the government, in political parties. And that is a much bigger, in a way, and more long-term problem than the economic problems we've faced over the last 2 years.
Now, Jamie, you mentioned that the economy is often the Achilles heel of the far right because they don't have any solutions, any good prescriptions. Do you have some examples of a far right party that has tried to do it and it didn't really work, or they've sort of muddled their message?
I mean, the economy is the one issue that outranks immigration as Europeans' top concerns often. And what tends to happen is that these populist right-wing parties always try to go after home affairs departments. They're really concerned with immigration and integration issues. But then when the economy comes to the fore, they don't have the reputation, or often the skills, or the heritage even, to be able to put forward a legitimate economic platform for growth and for jobs. And so you look at Marine Le Pen in the last French election. She did put forward some kind of economic policy framework, and it was ripped to pieces, frankly, by all the expert economists in the country, and I think that really damaged her. What you're seeing, I think, are the left-wing populist parties, people like Syriza, like even Beppe Grillo in Italy, for whom the economy is a bit more of a natural place for them. So you've seen the growth of parties like that, the Pirate Party in Germany, broadly left-wing populist, growing at an incredible rate over the last 2 years, far faster, and in many ways in competition with the right-wing populist parties.
Increasingly, supporters of far-right people are young, and they're not only young, but they're tech-savvy, and they use the internet much more than previous generations have done. Do you think this phenomenon is going to grow?
I did some research looking at the Facebook fans of all of these parties, and there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. Inevitably, with new types of technology, radical and fringe groups are often the first people to pick them up, because they feel shunned by the mainstream media, so they're always looking for alternatives. And what you've seen is parties like the Swedish Democrats, the Danish People's Party, Syriza indeed, the Front National in France. They're very, very good at using social media to get their message out, to get their supporters motivated, and to get their supporters out to vote in elections. And one of the reasons this is so important, actually, is looking at the ratio of online supporters compared to real-life members. I see that in these populist groups, there's far more of them online than many of the mainstream parties have. And they are motivated, and they're highly networked.
With that young group, that very tech-savvy group that's able to mobilize people so quickly, how is the old guard reacting to them? I mean, they don't really know all that technology so well, and they have maybe different beliefs from the young Turks. So is there a clash in many of these parties?
You have the traditional, may we say, voters, the sort of urban, older, associate the party maybe a bit more with sometimes with the sort of racist or anti-Semitic roots in the case of the Front National. And then a younger generation of under 30s who are coming to the party afresh. They don't know so much about the history. They see, in the case of the Front National, let's take that one, they see Marine Le Pen talking about secular French values, about liberty, about democracy, about fraternity, and that really resonates with them. And this is a new generation of people, and they are much savvier when it comes to controlling all the social media content that the Front National puts up. And increasingly, I think that is going to dictate the direction of these parties. And I think those younger people are going to push the parties in slightly more moderate directions, actually. But you are going to see this slight clash of worldviews about whether the party, and it's the same for all right-wing populist parties, whether they stay true to their roots, to their traditional, often quite overtly racist roots, if you like, or are they going to moderate?
Jamie Bartlett, thank you very much.